Right. Let's make a start then, shall we? We're going to talk today about the precept ceremony in Zen, and then we'll finish with a short meditation practice. So the precept ceremony is something essential to Buddhist practice, not just Zen. All schools of Buddhism have a kind of precept ceremony. The precepts, they are a series of kind of suggestions about how we live our life. They're not really commandments. They're not really a kind of moral dogma. They're not rules to obey, some kind of obligation. Or they're not set by someone out external. They're kind of like living expressions of our intention to wake up and to become Buddha, to realize the way of things. So we take on the precepts to kind of align ourselves with compassion, wisdom, and the path of awakening. Now, the roots of the precepts, they go right back to the time of the Buddha, 2,500 years ago. When people came to him to start a practice, be they taking monastic ordination or lay people, men and women, he would give them guidance about how to live their life, a kind of like practice path and ways in which they could, live in a way that isn't going to create harm, basically. So the precepts started off with kind of simple, very everyday, right? Don't harm people, don't lie, don't steal, cultivate kindness, cultivate clarity and insight. And then gradually over time, they kind of evolved a little bit and took on a more formal list, especially in the monastic community. If you're taking ordination to become a monk or a nun, then the precepts are fairly substantial and long. But the lay practitioner precepts also took on a kind of formality. And then as Buddhism traveled out, or spread out, I suppose, from India into China, and then so our branch of Buddhism is, the Zen school is the branch of Buddhism that spread north into China and then eventually across into Japan. And these precepts were maybe reinterpreted or looked at through the lens of all the other teachings that are arriving from India around emptiness and interdependence and interrelation. So we have in Zen this idea that the precepts are not fixed rules, they're expressions of our awakened behavior, of our awakened being. And they are natural for someone who has kind of arrived at awakening. You could say they're like a description of how a Buddha might behave. And if we're on the path to become a Buddha, then if we take on or you emulate the behavior of a Buddha, that's going to help us to move in that direction. One of the famous teachers from the medieval times, the Soto school in Japan, Zen Master Dogen, he said, when we receive the precepts, we are receiving the mind, the body, and the breath of the Buddha. So they're not really something to become different or to become special, but we take on the precepts as a way of remembering, as a way of stepping into who we already are. That's what Buddhism is all about, discovering who we already are. Our Buddha nature is here already. Japanese, in Zen, the precept ceremony is called jukai. Jukai. Jukai means, ju means to receive or to accept, and kai means the precepts in this case. So to receive the precepts, or maybe you could say to take refuge in the precepts. And it's the ceremony itself, the jukai, is a kind of public expression of your wish to take on the precepts. People do it, right, in a monastery or in a Zen center. They do it in a group of people, maybe a big group of people, or maybe sometimes they do it in a small group. or sometimes even just one-to-one with the teacher. So it's just about whatever feels appropriate and right for you. Some ceremonies, some schools do a very elaborate ceremony, maybe with long lead-up and preparation and things, be like doing Sunday school, and others like the our Zen Ways group here. We're based in London, but we have an online, fairly worldwide Sangha these days. We do a precept ceremony in person. We also do it online, not with me, with my teacher, with Zen Master Daidan. And that's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. So the key element, what's involved in taking the precepts? Well, there are probably, 4 or 5 different sort of steps in the actual ceremony itself. First of all, we take refuge. And we take refuge in the 3, what they call the triple gem. So we take refuge in the Buddha. And what does it mean to take refuge? To take refuge, it's like sheltering. It's like we, lean on or sort of take heart or take a sort of inspiration from the fact that these 3 different things we can kind of like come under the umbrella of. There's the Buddha, the person who lived 2,500 years ago, who began this whole thing, but also Buddha nature, like the fundamental nature of all things that the Buddha awoke to. We take refuge in that. We take refuge in the teaching, the Dharma. So all the teaching, the ways in to find this realization. We take refuge in the centuries of teaching that different teachers have come up with and pulled together. We take refuge in the Sangha. Sangha literally means community, and you could take it as being like your practice community, the people who come to your Zen group, or you could be it as like the Sangha, the whole worldwide practicing community of Buddhists, or you could see it as being like your community, including your family and your friends and all the people you rely on. We take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. It's ignoring we don't walk this path alone. That we have these resources, these, shelters that we can make use of. The second step in the ceremony is to do what's known as Sangha. Sangha literally means, san means regret and ge means resolve. So we acknowledge all of the unwholesome acts from our, past, all the things which we consider mistakes, which have caused suffering, which have caused pain, all the things which we're not so proud of, maybe. That's the regret side of things. We acknowledge the regret, and then we make a resolve that we will not do this again. So in our community here, we ask people to spend time coming up with a kind of list of all of their past unwholesome acts, as many as they can possibly, bring up. I mean, I'm not going to maybe include all of them, and maybe it's just maybe the main ones that might have influence over your life. So we come up, we meditate on it, we come up with it, we write it on a piece of paper, and then you might want to read it out to someone. And now this is a very sensitive step, and you need to read it to someone who's just going to listen, and it's just going to float on past, So Zen teachers within our group can offer that to people who are taking the precepts, just to be a witness, to listen to someone's, list of unwholesome acts. It can be very powerful to read it out, to see the ways in which we caused harm through confusion, fear, acting out of habit. And then we chant, from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, born of body, speech, and mind, I now fully acknowledge all these past acts. And then we take the piece of paper on which you've written them all, and we burn it. It's burnt. All that energy, all of that sort of, the past acts that you've remembered or written down, it gets transformed. It gets transformed into light. And what is enlightenment? It's the brightening, the awakening. It's that symbolism of taking all the things you've done before, no judgment, but we're working to transform them, to understand them, to kind of like liberate ourselves from the binds. Then we receive the 16 Bodhisattva precepts, which we'll come on to in a minute. These are the precepts that we look to in the Mahayana tradition. There's two schools of Buddhism. There's a more conservative southern tradition, Theravada, and then there's the more progressive northern tradition, the Mahayana. And so here we have 16 precepts of our Bodhisattva, which we'll come on to in a minute, as I say. Then we receive a Dharma name. So the teacher gives a certificate to say, you've taken on the precepts today, and this is your new name. My Dharma name, Kuren. Kuren. So Ku means empty, and Ren means lotus. So that's my Dharma name. It can be lots of things, different sort of. And the teacher, the idea is the teacher meditates on you as a person and comes up with a name that kind of, embodies your direction or your being or your kind of like something which you aspire to. Some people end up using a name, even as their first name. I know a few friends have taken their Dharma name and then kind of made it their first name. And then some people just, leave it to the side. It's up to you, really. And then you receive a rakusu as well. So a rakusu, this is what I'm wearing here. This thing around, it's like a bib. This is it here. Just a small square of fabric with a strap that goes around the neck. And it's kind of like a representation of a robe, a miniaturization of a robe. In some traditions, the students are required to sew it by hand by themselves. But in our particular school, we have someone who makes these because it's really devilishly complicated to make something like this with all the different pieces of fabric all sewn together. But you make it yourself, and it has a symbol here of maybe the original robe. This is the clasp. If you'd wore a full robe, it would have gone over the shoulder, over this shoulder, and hangs down, and then this would have been the bit where you tie it all together. So kind of like left over from that. This is the Zen circle of emptiness. So the rakusu, something which you wear when you've taken the precepts, when you have formally decided you'd like to be a Buddhist and become a Buddhist. And when you put on the rakusu, it's like reminding yourself, this is what I practice. Okay, so let's break down the 16 Bodhisattva precepts that we take in our Zen tradition. The first is the 3 refuges, as we mentioned. So I take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, the teaching, and the Sangha, the community. And then you receive the 3 pure precepts, and this is the really absolute heart of the Mahayana direction, the ethics, if you like. Cease from doing harm, to do good, and to do good for others. So, gosh, you think that's very vague. To cease from doing harm, and to do good and do good for others. That's the 3. Very vague, not prescriptive, not directive. And purposefully, they're open, spacious, and all-encompassing. No rigid rules here. very much open to interpretation. What do you mean, cease from doing harm? What does that mean, even? So we'll come to that. Then we take the 10 grave precepts. And they're often worded in the form, I undertake the precept to do my best not to kill. For example, the first one, not killing. Sometimes they're worded, do not kill. Maybe it's simplified. Yeah. So the first one, no killing. No stealing. Not to misuse sexuality. Not to lie. No intoxication, particularly intoxication of the mind. Not speaking of other people's faults. Not praising yourself or blaming or belittling other people. Not to be mean, so basically being generous. Don't be stingy. Not to harbour anger. And then the final one, not to abuse or defame is often written. Defame the 3 treasures. And the 3 treasures, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The triple gem. Each of these, we could probably do a talk on. Oh, definitely could. Maybe we can. We'll do a talk on each of these. Just very briefly, thinking about the not killing, the first one. I undertake the precept to do my best not to kill. When we start, it's not, we can't go to someone and ask, what does it mean not to kill? You tell me. That's not how it goes. It becomes then our practice to discern what it means to us not to kill. And there is no right or wrong answer. No one is going to say, oh, you did something wrong there. That's not how it works here. To undertake the precept not to kill means discerning for yourself, what does it mean? Some people interpret that as not eating meat, being vegetarian, but there are examples of Buddhist groups, monks even, who do eat meat. Some people take it to an extreme and would go to lengths not to step on bugs as they're walking along the road, not to, breathe in a fly when you're cycling along, those kind of things. But it's maybe seen as a more extreme. You could see it as being not killing an idea, or being a party pooper, like going into a party and kind of deadening the atmosphere. You can also see on that level too. You could turn it around and say, this is about cultivating a kind of reverence for life. This is about promoting life, encouraging life to flourish. There's lots and lots of different layers to these precepts. And the beautiful thing is that because there's no external person, body, book, teacher telling you what is right or wrong, what's the right way of interpreting this precept and the wrong way, then it is our own responsibility. And when it becomes our own responsibility, it becomes something living. It becomes something which is necessarily changing, as our practice deepens, as time goes on, as we understand more. Where we draw our line about what is or isn't killing now might be different in 5 years' time. We might see a different view or just decide, and actually it might take us a long, long time to sort of realize the depths of it, and that's what it's all about, The line is going to change. It's a living understanding. And it's not about so much about what we do, but more about our intention. Okay. So these precepts all refer to our volitional act, like things we do consciously. So we might, accidentally kill something. And although we've taken all precautions, we've done our absolute best not to allow that to happen, but it does happen. And that's not really what these precepts are about. It's not like chastising yourself for doing something which you couldn't avoid. In fact, there is no punishment. Of course, the only punishment is yourself taking on these precepts and recognizing that you weren't acting in accordance with them. So we take on the precepts and we do our best. We make mistakes, we fall down, we get up again. We fall down again, we get up again. Each time we learn, each time we soften, each time we bring compassion to our behavior. The precepts are an aspiration to the way a Buddha lives. When we take the precept ceremony, it's like a milestone on our journey. It's not a destination, it's not what we're heading for. I think some people have this idea that, I can only take the precepts once I've really explored them, spent years living them, and now I'm ready to have the ceremony. It's almost like a stamp. Oh, well done, you've lived a life of the precepts. Not at all. That's not how it goes. The precept ceremony is like establishing your intention. It's a bit like getting married. Two people can live together for their whole life without getting married and have a wonderful relationship. Some people feel the need to stand up in front of their friends and have their commitment to each other witnessed. And that's like the precepts, okay? So we stand up in front of our community and we have our intention to live as a Buddhist, to live in accordance with the precepts. We have it witnessed. And that creates a very strong energy and direction. The precepts don't come alive in the ceremony. The ceremony is about, solidifying that intention. The precepts, they come alive when we have a difficult conversation, when we have a moment of anger, when we have fear arising, when we're generous, when we act with restraint, when we act with kindness and compassion. That is when the precepts come alive. The ceremony is like planting the seeds, and the daily life is what waters the seeds and what allows the seeds to grow and germinate into strong and beautiful plants. People sometimes worry, I can't take the precept ceremony, I'll break them, I'm not ready. But again, that's not what it's about. Of course we will make mistakes. We will not act in accordance with the precepts now and then. We will forget. We will make mistakes, yeah? Breaking the precepts, quote, breaking the precepts is how we learn. We reflect on our actions and we say, okay, gosh, that really was lying. That really was not being truthful to myself and to other people. Yeah, okay, I need to really look at that. And I will add that to my list of regrets about past actions and also make a resolve not to do that again. The precepts are a lifelong journey that are lived from our heart, or we could say from the hara, from the belly, from our being. In our school of Zen, in the Rinzai school of Zen, our particular branch, the precepts are kind of like, we study them as koans. Koans are like focus points for our meditation. We study them fairly early on. We study them again in the middle. And then when you're just about to finish your koan study after, I don't know, doing 500 koans or whatever it is, you've done years and years of practice and lots of insight. You study them again. It's like the last thing to study before you become a Zen teacher, then Zen master. So these precepts are always something to look at with fresh eyes. We meet them in every moment of our life. We meet them here, now. We're invited to look at them in this situation, in that situation, in this moment, in that moment. And we are asked also to take responsibility for interpreting them, for living in accordance with them, and responsibility for the consequences of the actions we make, whatever consequences they might be. So we can ask, what does aligning with the precept not to kill mean today? What does it mean right now? How could we act here, right, looking at the screen, being in this talk? How can we act in a way which means not to kill? What does that even mean? What does it mean to act in accordance with the precept not to lie? Not to lie, or you could say to be truthful. Not to tell a mistruth. What about when honesty might also cause suffering or harm? If I'm 100% honest, if I tell absolutely the truth, that might cause harm in this situation. It's not easy. It's not black or white. What does it mean to align with the precept of not speaking of other people's faults? When someone needs protection, when someone needs, help, we have to hold these precepts lightly. No one's going to tell us whether we did it right or not. Now, just to finish, within the precept ceremony, there's a bit where you say, is it your wish to become a Buddhist? And you have to answer with a big yes. Now that in itself can be a little bit of a block for some people. Like, I've been doing this stuff for a few years, I've been meditating, and I think I want to align myself with the precepts. But that bit where he asked me, do I want to become a Buddhist? I'm not sure. I want to label myself. I'm not sure I'm ready to label myself a Buddhist. I am a Buddhist. If you've got those forms that come in and says, what's your religion? Am I going to tick Buddhist? I don't think I need to label anything. Well, that's true. It's true. You don't need to label anything. Is it your wish to align your life with the path of the Buddha, to walk that journey towards realizing enlightenment, towards understanding who and what you are in relation to the universe, to understand that there are different ways of seeing things than just our sort of normal view, and that walking that path can show us great insights into all of that. And if that's true, am I walking the path of Buddhism? Yes. We need to overcome, we need to deal with that part of that kind of like identity or how you see yourself. It's not about a belief. It's not about taking on a belief. It's not about joining a club. It's about this vow. I vow to live more consciously, to reduce harm, to cultivate compassion, to wake up. And in fact, actually, Zen doesn't really care about what we call ourselves. You can call yourself whatever. In the end, it's about how you live, what you do, how you act and respond to life. The Jukai ceremony is not a graduation. It's not sort of the end point of a path. It's really the beginning. It's about intention. It's about creating that intention to live from the place of awakening, from that place of Buddha. Receiving the precepts doesn't mean that we're going to live the precepts perfectly. It just creates that energy that moves us in the right direction. It creates the kind of awakeness to the possibility of living more in line with what we really are. So if you're interested to think about this more, then and maybe you're not in the UK or further away, we do offer the precept ceremony online. You would need to sort of join our organization, Zen Ways, become a member and start practicing with us, and then speaking to one of us as a teacher and to our main teacher, Daizen, organizing it all can be all done. So if that feels important to you, feels like a direction you want to head in, just let me know, get in touch, and we can organize something. Yeah, if there's any other thoughts or comments or reflections or questions or anything, just do feel free to drop them down in the chat. Otherwise, we're going to move into a meditation practice. So arranging your body in such a way that you feel comfortable upright, sitting upright. Maybe allowing your eyes to lower or close. And reminding yourself of your physical alignment here. We have a uprightness, balance, and lift, a kind of poise in the body where everything feels aligned and awake. And at the same time, we also have a relaxation, a softness in your body, relaxing the face and the shoulders. Softening the belly. Already spoken about softening the eyes, closing the eyes if you like. And our physical posture is also this same alignment, coming into alignment with this awakening. An awakeness, an alertness, but at the same time, a relaxation, openness in your body. And then beginning to turn your attention fully inside. You may want to begin with an awareness of the breath, the feeling of breathing. So let's begin with the first of the 10 precepts that we were talking about earlier. The precept not to kill. And we could just hold this precept in our awareness as we sit here breathing. What does it mean to live right now in such a way that we don't kill? We can bring it more and more and more down to just this moment. You could say that holding a posture which is overly tense, where we're striving to make some kind of shape, like we're trying to sit in lotus position when it's just really not appropriate for our body, that is in some way killing. It is blocking, restricting, shutting down our flourishing life. When we hold tension in the body, that blocks sensation, or perhaps overrides the more subtle sensations. So, to align with this precept not to kill, it's about softening and relaxing the tension so that we can become aware of those more subtle currents, the currents that come from life. We notice a thought arising, perhaps many thoughts arising. To deny that the thought arises, to sort of snip it off at the base, is that killing? Could we allow the thought to just arise and pass? We don't have to get caught up in it and start thinking about something. But the thought can just be left alone, arise and pass. Like waves on the sea, they're just coming and going. Not getting involved in the thoughts. What does it mean to live in such a way that we align with this precept, not to kill, just now? It mean to live in such a way that we encourage life, that we allow life to flourish in whatever form that is within you right now. And just as we come towards the end of this practice, we could probably expand this sense. So just think about what we're going to be doing next for the rest of today. Might there be something to consider about how you're going to live the rest of your day to align with this precept not to kill, to encourage life to flourish in you and around you? Not to cut something off, not to block or restrict something happening. So then as we come to the end of our practice, we can start to sway the body a bit from side to side. Taking a deeper breath if you like. And letting your eyes lift. For the merit of our practice to all living beings. May all beings be safe, be well. May they be content. May they find true liberation. So thank you everyone for joining in today, coming along and exploring this sort of subject of the precepts and the precept ceremony.